Imagine a creature so famous that it defined what the word dinosaur meant for more than a century. Imagine children sketching it in their notebooks, museums building towering reconstructions, and filmmakers bringing it to life on the big screen. Now imagine that this creature never really existed, not in the way we thought. It was an accident, a legend created not by evolution but by human error. This is the story of how scientists accidentally created a dinosaur that became more powerful in our imagination than in the fossil record. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe, so you don't miss more stories of prehistoric mistakes, forgotten monsters, and the strange truths hidden in ancient bones. The 19th century was an age of ambition, discovery, and rivalry. Fossil hunters fanned out across the badlands of the American West, unearthing bones of giants unlike anything ever seen. But paleontology was still young, fragile, and desperate for glory. At the center of this storm were two men, Othniel Charles Marsh and Edward Drinker Cope. Their rivalry became legend, known as the Bone Wars, a competition so fierce that science itself sometimes came second. In their rush to outdo each other, mistakes were inevitable, and one mistake would become the most famous dinosaur of all time. In 1879, Marsh unearthed a nearly complete skeleton in Wyoming. Massive, long-tailed, long-necked, it was the kind of discovery paleontologists dreamed of, but the skeleton was missing one critical piece: the skull. Marsh wanted to publish fast, before Cope could steal his thunder, so he did what seemed logical. He borrowed from another dig. He took a skull that seemed to fit, a skull that actually belonged to a different dinosaur. He attached it to the body, filled in the gaps, and unveiled his masterpiece to the world. He named it Brontosaurus, the thunder lizard. The reaction was immediate. Newspapers hailed it as a wonder, museums clamored for reconstructions, and the public fell in love. Brontosaurus became the dinosaur. It embodied the mystery of prehistory, the colossal scale of a vanished world. For decades, it stood proudly in exhibits, graced the covers of books, and even thundered across the silver screen. The legend had been born. But the truth was far less glorious. Brontosaurus was a chimera, stitched together from mismatched bones. The skull did not belong to it. The skeleton was nearly identical to another dinosaur Marsh himself had named Apatosaurus. Scientists pointed out the error, but their voices were drowned out by the roar of public fascination. Officially, by the early 20th century, Brontosaurus was declared invalid. It didn't exist. The name was dropped from scientific literature. And yet, Brontosaurus lived on. Why? Because the legend was stronger than the truth. Museums kept the name, unwilling to confuse visitors or abandon their star attraction. Textbooks continued to print it. Children continued to memorize it. Hollywood chose it over Apatosaurus because it sounded dramatic, cinematic, unforgettable. The thunder lizard had become too iconic to erase. The scientists who tried to kill Brontosaurus failed, because the world wanted to believe. This wasn't the only time mistakes created monsters. Elasmosaurus was once reconstructed with its head on its tail. Megalosaurus was drawn as a giant lizard crawling on all fours. Iguanodon, one of the first dinosaurs ever described, was imagined with a horn on its nose, a horn that turned out to be a thumb spike. Each of these mistakes gave us creatures that never truly lived, but that shaped how the world saw the past. Science made errors, and those errors became legends. But Brontosaurus was different. It was more than a mistake. It was a myth that became real in the hearts and minds of people. Even after scientists erased it, Brontosaurus lived in toys, films, and stories. It became a symbol of dinosaurs themselves, the gentle giant of the prehistoric world. It was proof that imagination could overpower fact, that the monsters we invent can outlive the ones that nature gave us. The irony is that the truth about Brontosaurus didn't stay buried forever. In a twist that no one expected, new research in the 21st century would breathe life back into the thunder lizard. After a century of exile, Brontosaurus would rise again, not as an accident, but as a real dinosaur. For more than a century, Brontosaurus was a ghost. Scientists insisted it wasn't real. Museums quietly admitted the name was wrong. And yet the legend refused to die. Children still whispered it. Artists still painted it. And filmmakers still resurrected it on screen. It was the dinosaur that shouldn't have existed. A creature born of error but immortalized by culture. And then, in one of the strangest twists in the history of paleontology, the ghost returned to life. In 2015, a team of paleontologists re-examined the bones of both Apatosaurus and Brontosaurus using modern technology and statistical analysis. They compared hundreds of fossils, studying the shapes of vertebrae, ribs, and skull fragments in ways Marsh and Cope could never have imagined. And what they found shocked the scientific world. The bones were different consistently, measurably different. Brontosaurus, long dismissed as an Apatosaurus clone, might actually deserve its own name after all. The news exploded across headlines. Brontosaurus, the dinosaur scientists had once invented by mistake, had been resurrected by evidence. For generations it had survived as a myth. Now it was once again a reality. Museums rejoiced, paleontologists debated, and the public celebrated the return of the thunder lizard. The mistake had become truth. The legend had come full circle, but not everyone agreed. Some scientists still argue that Brontosaurus and Apatosaurus are too similar to separate. Others believe the differences are real and meaningful. The debate continues, a reminder that science is not about certainty but about questions. What we know today may change tomorrow. Brontosaurus lives once again. But even now its existence hangs in a fragile balance between evidence and interpretation. This strange journey reveals something deeper about science itself. It shows us that mistakes are not dead ends, they are stepping stones. Marsh's error, attaching the wrong skull to the wrong body, may have been careless, but it created a legend that inspired generations. Children grew up dreaming of Brontosaurus, and some of those children became paleontologists themselves. The myth drew people into science, and science, in turn, corrected the myth. In being wrong, Marsh accidentally gave the world one of its most enduring dinosaurs, and Brontosaurus is not alone. The history of paleontology is littered with creatures built from mistakes. Melasmosaurus with its backward neck, Iguanodon with its horned nose, Megalosaurus imagined as a four-legged dragon. Even Neanderthals were once pictured as brutish, hunched savages, a mistake that lasted for nearly a century. Each of these errors became legends in their own right. They filled books, inspired stories, and shaped our view of the past. They remind us that the boundary between truth and myth is fragile, always shifting. What makes Brontosaurus unique is that it crossed that boundary twice. It was invented, dismissed, and then resurrected. It became a symbol not just of dinosaurs, but of science itself, messy, imperfect, but always moving forward. The thunder lizard teaches us that knowledge is not carved in stone. It evolves, it changes, and sometimes it even admits it was wrong. Imagine standing in a museum today, looking up at a towering skeleton labeled Brontosaurus. A century ago, that label would have been considered false, even embarrassing. Today, it is celebrated again. Though still debated, what you are looking at is not just a dinosaur, it is a story. A testament to the way humans reconstruct the past. You are seeing bones, yes, but also imagination, rivalry, error, correction, and rediscovery. You are seeing science in motion. The story of Brontosaurus is the story of how legends are made. It shows us that we are not just passive observers of history, we are creators of it. We take fragments of bone, we fit them together, and when the pieces don't match, we fill the gaps with stories. Sometimes those stories are wrong, but sometimes being wrong brings us closer to the truth. Brontosaurus was never supposed to exist. It was born from haste, fueled by rivalry, and declared a mistake. Yet it lived in the hearts of millions, and in the end, science found a way to bring it back. That is why it remains one of the most unforgettable dinosaurs in history, not because it was perfect, but because it was flawed. The dinosaur scientists accidentally created became a legend, a myth too powerful to erase. And perhaps that is the most important lesson of all: the past is not fixed. It is alive, changing with every discovery, every correction, every new question we dare to ask. The monsters we build from mistakes are not failures, they are proof that the search for truth is never over. So the next time you hear the name Brontosaurus, remember its strange journey. Remember that it was both a lie and a truth, a ghost and a reality, a mistake and a miracle. Remember that it represents not just the dinosaurs, but the human desire to understand, to imagine, and to believe. Scientists accidentally created a dinosaur legend, and in doing so, they revealed the very heart of science itself, a story that is always being rewritten.